Hi, Matthew.
Hi, Jared.
So thank you for coming in again today. So to touch up on a few things before we get started today, um, as you're aware from our last session, I am a counseling student operating as a supervisee under my professor, Dr. Ocampo. So our recorded session today will most likely be reviewed by her and any TAs that she has for grading purposes. Is that okay with you?
Yep.
Okay, so before we begin, we need to kind of talk about the consent form that you signed. Did you get that from me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Did you have any questions about that before we begin?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. So, for your information, everything that we talk about today is to remain private and confidential between the two of us. There are a few instances in which I may have to break confidentiality. But in the event of me having to do so, we will have a prior discussion to discuss what that looks like. So the first of those instances is if you talk about your plans to carry out harming yourself or someone else. The second of those instances would be if you imply that you're aware of neglect or abuse being done to a minor or um, a vulnerable adult. And then the third is if you're involved in a legal case in which I'm subpoenaed to discuss the content of the sessions that we have together. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have any questions before we get started?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. What would you like to talk about today?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that coming in here today. And I think I'd like to maybe delve deeper into some of what we talked about last time in regard to just my difficulty managing like work-life balance. Yeah, if we can kind of pick up where we left off last time.
Okay, sounds great. Um, from what I remember from our last session, you were explaining to me how you feel like it's difficult for you to kind of mentally check out from work, and you tend to bring a lot of work responsibilities home with you, and that's kind of rubbing off on your personal life. Is
Mm-hmm.
that correct?
Yeah, and I would say too, almost the inverse of that too. Sometimes it's almost like when I'm at work, I struggle to remain present at work, and often think of or find myself drawn towards things at home or things in my personal life. Whereas when I'm at home, I'm often drawn to like ruminating and thinking about things at work. So it just feels really hard a lot of the time, just to stay present with where I am and what I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
in any
Yeah.
given time.
Okay. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you're feeling a bit of a misalignment in connecting with the space and the place that you're in, and kind of being mentally plugged into, um, you know, when you're at work. You would like to be able to be thinking about and be invested in work.
Mm-hmm.
And then at home, you'd like to be able to unplug from work and really settle into relaxation and recharging, and enjoying just being home. That's correct.
Yeah, I think misalignment is a really good word to use to describe it. Um, it does often feel like what I'm doing and where I'm at any given moment is misaligned with where I'm at internally or what I'm experiencing internally, whether they're like thoughts or emotions or even sensations. It's just kind of like a like pervasive misalignment a lot of the time. And it feels like a lot of the time it's that way.
Okay. Yeah. So you're telling me like a majority of the time you feel disconnected from what you're doing at the moment. That's correct.
Yeah, disconnected is another good word. Just kind of feeling disconnected from myself in a lot of ways.
Okay. Do you have any ideas of maybe how you could find a little bit more connection and more alignment with yourself and where you're at?
Yeah, I mean, I have some ideas. I think I try to practice mindfulness and meditation in various forms, and just that like present practice of being fully present in my body at any given moment. Um, but I also find that very quickly seems to fade away, especially when I'm like overwhelmed, either at work or at home with personal things or work things.
Okay. So it sounds to me like you're really incorporating a lot of really good practices to stay present and aware of where you're at any given time, but really maintaining that awareness, um, especially when you feel like maybe you've got a lot more responsibility at both work and home.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I find it useful a lot of the time, some of the time. Um, and as I was thinking more about this after our last session, I was really noticing, and as I was kind of like tracking myself in real time, I was really noticing the transition between work and home is really hard for me, especially. Um, Getting home from work, um, and coming in the door and really having to kind of shift my focus from my clients at work to my partner and my home life in general. I often find really frustrating. Like I get frustrated and kind of almost angry.
It's interesting. Um, do you know where this feeling of frustration comes from? Or is this something that's a bit harder for you to pin down?
It's harder for me to pin down. It seems out of place a lot of the time.
Okay. Can I ask about how long is your commute from work to home?
About an hour.
Okay. And what's your experience like commuting from work to home?
Mm, I mean, traffic is generally relatively light, so it's not a lot of like acute stress driving and navigating traffic. I think I'm usually either processing things from my work day as I'm coming home, or just kind of like planning things I need to do, to-do lists.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay.
Often not a lot of thought for what happens when I get home.
Okay. And these to-do lists that you're planning, are these work related? Are these home related?
It could be both.
It's a mixture of both.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you feel equally as pressured at home as you do at work, or do you find more responsibility and pressure at work versus home? What's that kind of balance of responsibility like in terms of how it feels to you?
Now let me think about that for a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, take your time.
I want to say they're just different. I don't know if I would place more weight on one or the other, just that they're different.
Okay. So I'm hearing you kind of explain to me that they feel a bit equal in terms of the amount of mental energy you give to each one, and each one's responsibility, and the to-do list that come with each kind of category of your life. We'll say, um, but they're very different. And so, because they're very different, do you think um, you experience some frustration in being able to like shift gears from work to home because of the vast difference?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and as you're talking too, I was thinking, I often at work for 6 to 7 hours, I'm very focused on taking care of the needs of my clients, and then coming home, I know on some level that I now have to both care for my partner as well as myself.
Mm.
And after caring for my clients with such like hyper focus all day, and then feeling the added responsibility and lack of reprieve and having to now care for other people, it feels like a lot. Even just reflecting on that in this moment, like a heavy weightedness on my chest and kind of a sadness.
Okay.
Yeah,
That sounds like a lot of pressure. Yeah. I can
there's a
under-
lot of pressure.
I can understand how that would be frustrating. Definitely. It sounds to me like you're explaining how you've got a lot of personal and professional responsibility to take care of not only your clients but also your partner. Um, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm kind of sensing that there, at the end of the day, isn't maybe as much focus on taking care of you and your needs as maybe you'd like, or as maybe as much as you need.
Yeah, I would say sometimes it can be hard. I mean, I think generally, or in a broader view, I do okay taking care of myself. But I could definitely do better, as well as do better at taking care of my partner.
Okay. Well, let's focus on taking care of yourself for a moment. I remember we talked last session about um, your extreme ability to take care of your work life, and you felt like a lot of that came from your upbringing. And so I guess want to touch on that a little bit if we can. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So in in your childhood, it was really important to your parents to really maintain and put a lot of energy into their career life, and you witnessed that as a child. And so, kind of summarizing what we talked about last week, you saw that as a child, and as you grew up and you started working and developing a career life, you found yourself kind of emulating what you saw growing up. That's correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about where that came from?
Yeah, I mean, I can remember my parents putting a lot of effort, time, energy into work. And now that I'm thinking about it too, I can remember times when they would also put a lot of time, energy, work into taking care of each other. Like I can remember my mom would come home from work usually, my stepdad would already be at home, and they would usually go pretty quickly. They would both go into their bedroom, shut the door, to us kids, and we kind of knew that that was like their time to really kind of land at home together and take care of each other and decompress after work and kind of transition or shift into home for the evening.
Okay.
At least as an adult, that's how I frame it.
Okay. That's must have been really nice for you to see as a child.
I actually remember feeling kind of shut out a lot of the time from that.
Okay. So, you think that growing up, it was really important to the family's culture, as well as your socioeconomic status level, to work really, really hard and to devote maybe a little bit of time for your parents to take care of their relationship alone. But you felt maybe a bit rejected. Is that correct?
I don't know if I would go so strong as to say rejected. I think partly, yeah, as a child, I think I read that as probably some rejection.
Well, what word would you choose to describe that feeling?
Well, I think it's appropriate to some level. I guess feeling left out, or which I guess is, yeah, kind of rejection.
Alienated?
Yeah, alienated, sad, lonely.
Okay. So there's some sadness and loneliness that comes with prioritizing caring for a relationship. Okay. It's a lot of interesting concepts that you bring up, and I can understand why you would feel that way as a child, and maybe this could be the source of why it's really hard for you to then come home and take care of your own personal needs in your relationship as well, while being in a relationship. So it's really interesting, and I think we're looking at wrapping up the end of this session. But if you're open to coming back, I'd love to hear more about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd be into that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me today. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Thank you.